Hello and welcome to Missio Talk. My name is Mark Chamberlain and this is a forum to talk about issues relating to ministry and mission in the Christchurch Diocese. Its purpose is to resource our clergy and parishes and also to help us all strengthen the way we participate in God's mission, God's great mission to the world. My guest again today is John Eatwell, Organisational Psychologist. Thank you so much, John, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us.
My pleasure.
So this time I'd like to talk about organisational change.
Yep.
It's part of the scene now in all churches. Things are changing all around us. Churches are having to change. Can you help put yourself, for example, in the shoes of an average vicar wanting to introduce change? How would you go about that?
I think the key element for change to focus on really, I think, is focusing on the positive aspects of it. So the research on our brain says we probably need a ratio of 3:1 before we see stuff as neutral. In change, the ratio is 4:1. So
right.
So the idea really here is you don't want to deny that it's hard. But we do want to focus on the positive. So where are we heading? What's our vision? How we're going to get there? That's what we want to focus on. And I think the other one is we tend to think of change as being negative, but actually, if we look at the research on our happiness, actually growing and developing is something that makes us happy. A lot of good psychologies happened either before CAT scans or before ethics committees or after CAT scans, because now we can actually put you in a CAT scan and we can teach you some stuff and we can see what happens in your brain. And your brain releases endorphins and all the good chemicals, endocannabinoids, all the good stuff, which make us happy when we learn something new. And we're happier than we normally are for about 2 weeks after we learn something new. And then we go back to our normal level of happiness. So actually being developed and stimulated and growing is a fundamental thing to our personal happiness and resilience. So we think of change as being negative, but actually growing and learning is fundamental to our happiness.
Okay.
So how do we help people see this as a growth, a learning opportunity rather than as a negative? So I'd say when we're focusing on changing, let's think about this as a learning opportunity. So your 4:1 ratio is, we do need to acknowledge where we're at. So we're not where we need to be. But, you may have heard of Cotter is a famous person in change management.
Yes.
And he says create a burning platform, which is saying what's wrong. And
Right.
that will leverage change.
Yes.
But actually the research shows that doesn't work. If we focus on what's wrong, actually that makes few people feel, that everything they've done in the past is wrong, it's a failure, and doesn't create any belief about where we can head.
Yes.
If everything we've done so far is wrong, how are we going to meet this change? So what we want to do is we want to say, we want to identify our strengths again.
Yes.
And you may have heard of a SWOT, type approach. What are our strengths? What are our opportunities? So really, what are our strengths? How are we going to leverage these strengths to tackle this new challenge at a congregation level, but also at an individual level? And how do we create that confidence in people that they can meet the requirements of these change and see this as a learning opportunity rather than it being something they can't cope with? David Cooperrider was a famous researcher. He created appreciative inquiry, if you've come across that. And he said, really, people don't fear change. They fear that they can't meet the requirements of the change. So, how do we help build their confidence that actually they can meet the requirements of where you're heading?
So this is partly about what you were talking about earlier about positive, enthusiastic leadership at this point.
Correct, yes. And leadership is a key component of change. So, and a key component, as you say, key component of that confidence. If we're up there in the front, being enthusiastic, giving people confidence that you can meet the requirements of the change, helping them identify how their strengths will help in this change, then yes, they're going to see this as something that they can achieve.
So meeting the
Yeah.
meeting the requirements of change was the phrase you used. Does that mean how do I fit in the new thing that's coming in the future?
Yeah.
What is my role in that new configuration? Is that?
Yes, yeah, role and what you're required to do. So, for example, you might sit down and say, you know, what are the strengths of our congregation at the moment? And it might be, hey, we're really good at welcoming new people into the parish.
Yep.
You know, we're really good at building relationships.
Yep.
So then you'd say, okay, if we want to get more mission focused, actually one of the things required to do that is to get more relationship focused.
Yeah.
We're already good at that in terms of when people come into the parish.
Right.
How do we leverage that strength now to go out and talk to people who are not in the parish
I
or
see
not
that.
in the doors? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do we leverage the stuff we're already good at in different ways? And this is a fundamental of appreciative inquiry. You know, David Cooper wrote there. So it's around, you know, how do we look for the examples of where or when we've done stuff that helps us get to where we want to be, and how do we say, okay, how do we get more consistent at that? How do we use that more?
How do you get more of it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And I love where words come from. But efficacy is one of my favourite words, and that's really the confidence that I can meet the requirements, or the confidence I can move forward. So yeah, how do we build that in our people? Yeah.
So within our culture, churches are having a hard time of it because of COVID and a number of other reasons. And in some cases, you know, the morale is low in some of our churches. And we want to change that. We want to move towards a more confident, growing situation. What advice would you give to vicars in that situation where there is a low morale situation and they want to move to somewhere better?
Yeah, well, you know, and you're not uncommon. You know, a lot of organisations I'm dealing with at the moment are in the same situation. You know, people are, you know, there's more impact of the Ukraine war, house prices, inflation,
all of that.
You know, all those things are playing on people's minds a lot more than what we probably appreciate or realise.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of key thoughts for you. One is prioritise. You know, and I think our brain again can cope with probably about 3 things we're working on at the moment. So if you've got 10 things that you're trying to work on,
right,
actually our brain's whirring on probably 7 of them that it can't do anything about, which is using cognitive energy.
Yeah.
If we can narrow down to what are the top 3 priorities at the moment.
I see.
And I think Jim Collins is a famous person in change, and he called it the hedgehog principle.
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to, if we want to achieve something, we need to really focus on what are our top priorities. And when we do that, I think actually that is a relief to a lot of people. There's a whole lot of stuff they can let go of.
I see.
And we say, well, we may do that, but that's going to be 6 months' time rather than now.
So simplify a wee bit.
Simplify, yep. And if we want to do something new, what are we going to stop doing?
Yep.
You know, what's not working? You know, so let's, you know, again, focus that energy.
Yep.
The second one is, I think, is really if you're starting from a low base, how do you focus your effort? You know, and you know, there'll be some people in your parish who are already enthusiastic and motivated. How do you work with them? So, you know, spend your time with those people, because that will build momentum faster than trying to dissipate your effort.
Yep.
So there'll be some people who are enthusiastic and motivated. You can work with them, create momentum. There'll be a bunch of people who are in the middle, and there'll be probably people at the end who you know, will find it difficult to transition. So the more you can work with these, the positive ones, the bigger impact you have.
So with the disease model, John, they talk about the R value, and if it's below 1, it's going to die out. If it's above 1, it's going to grow and continue.
Yep.
So is that a model for change?
That's exactly the model. So, so it's called the tipping point model of change, but based on a disease model of change. So, so effectively, your infectious people are your advocates. You know, so these are the people who are already passionate and enthusiastic. So building those people, they have a positive R, so they infect other people with their viewpoint.
I see.
And the people in the middle, these ambivalent ones, or people who haven't heard the message yet, they're much more likely to buy into it if they hear about it from somebody else. You know, if they read about it in the newsletter, they may be informed, but they're not likely to actually come on board and become an advocate. They need contact from other people. So likewise, you may have some other people at the other end who think it's a bad idea. So they're also infectious, so they can bring other people to their viewpoint as well. So, so we're trying to build the advocates as fast as possible to win the middle ground, as it were, without spending too much time on the resistors. So that's kind of the model of change. And the research is, if we can get to 16%, 16% of advocates without any resistors, then actually the system tips pretty quickly in our favour.
I see.
So, so this is the R value. If we've got 16% out people who are infectious, actually the whole group will become.
It's a lot lower than one might have assumed.
Correct. Yeah. But it's the same thing, you know. As COVID we found, you know, you tell two friends, they tell two friends. Yeah. Pretty soon we've found.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So really concentrate on those supporters, early adopters, enthusiastic people.
Yes.
Concentrate on those first and foremost.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And don't. And I think there's a leadership mistake in assuming the top performers or the enthusiastic people, you can leave them to it. You know, actually, again, the research shows we can have a bigger impact on the performance of an organisation by coaching our top performers. You know, we have a bigger impact by supporting those people. So I don't assume that they're all good, I'll leave them to it and I'll spend all my time on this group here. Actually, you know, we need to maintain them. We need to help them grow and stretch and learn and develop just the same as the other people.
So multiple touches, multiple contacts.
Correct,
So you're building up that core.
That's correct.
Not just as a one-off, but ongoing.
Yeah, and I mean, in an organisational context, if we're not helping people learn and grow, 46% of those people are disengaged. So, you know, so if we leave people to it, the chances are that they're going to become disengaged or are disengaged. If we're working on people's weaknesses, 24% of those people are disengaged. So it's better to work on weaknesses than nothing. If we're working on people's strengths, only 1% of those people are disengaged.
Oh, really?
So, so if we can really find these enthusiastic people, find their strengths, help them use those talents more, that's where they're going to maintain that enthusiasm. They're going to spread that enthusiasm to the rest of the
So it's not just about getting them on board, and that's good, but bringing them under your tent, sharing, confiding about the change and why it's happening, and can they support that, but then ongoing contact about that so they maintain that knowledge and enthusiasm and can affect others.
Yes, and I love that analogy of getting people in your tent. I think that's a great analogy for it, you know, and as a leader, you know, we want to trust people slightly more than we probably feel comfortable with. You know? So this is part of it, you know, how do we expect slightly more than we probably feel comfortable with? Because quite more often than not, our expectations are positively reinforced. So how do we, that's part of learning and growing, is helping people trusting and stretching. And by doing that, of course, they know what's going on, they know where you're heading. So when other people question them, they can go, oh no, trust X. He knows what he's doing. You know, so they can dissipate that message or help transfer.
So there's a new
trust.
learning there for me, and that is, how can I as a leader encourage the people around me to be growing? And I guess that's about growing in their confidence, growing their skills. Are there other aspects of that?
Yeah, well, it's the same as a leadership though, isn't it? You know, if we want to be good at 4 or 5 things, we've got to be exceptional at those. How do we help our people be exceptional? The organist or the reader, or you know, we assume if they're doing okay, then that's good. But actually, how do we stretch them a bit? How do we help them be better? How do we do more of it or excel? So you know, how do we nudge people along a little bit?
Well, I think we've come to the close. I mean, we could talk a lot more about this, about organisational change and facilitating change. building towards a tipping point by really working with those supporters and enthusiastic people, making sure they're growing.
Yep.
That's another element that's kind of newish to me. But there are other elements that you touched on the way through about change, how it's not necessarily a negative thing because it's new. Some people could see it as an opportunity to grow.
Correct,
and to
yep.
give reassurance around that
Yes.
is an important element. So I think we better close off, John, and thank
Yeah.
you so much for again sharing from your wisdom.
Yeah.
We very much appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Cheers.